Greetings fellow men, servus Männer, it is Red Pill Germany again, and today I want to do something different, a little bit at least. In recent weeks I reported a lot about the current ongoing situation in Germany. I spent a lot of time translating articles and reading articles and telling you the details, what Angela Merkel did now and how our crisis of the government here in Germany unfolded precisely. Now on this Sunday, allow me to take a different approach a little bit. I want to take a couple of steps back or actually look at the situation from above. I still will tell you in the beginning of this video what happened in the meantime, but then I quickly want to take a broader view at the situation. So of course I told you at the end of the last video that the SPD, the Social Democrats, still have to agree to the plans of Horst Seehofer and Angela Merkel, to the conservative parties in the coalition, which they did now. I want to spare you the predictable and boring details here. Suffice it to say that when parties make compromises, of course, they each have to sacrifice some of their positions, and when the other side wants them to agree to something, they have to give them something in return. In the end, they all come together in front of the cameras and the microphones, and they all have to present to the people what they achieved and what the others didn't want to have in there, but for their agreement they made them give them this and that. And each party wants to present itself as the winner, or at least that they did a reasonably good job for their clientele, for their followers, for their little corner of the political spectrum. You can all imagine that this agreement that they arrived at in the end doesn't really work in the real world. It is not effective. It is a joke. It was not designed in order to solve any problem or in order to deal with the situation at hand in an effective manner. No, it was in an effective manner. No, it was only designed so that each of the political parties could save face and present itself as the winner or not as the loser at least. The actual requirements of the situation at the southern border, for example, did not play any role and were not considered at all in this agreement, believe me. They were fighting more about how to call these camps or these centers where these migrants who illegally cross the border, and also our federal minister from Bavaria, Horst Seehofer, made sure that a Bavarian border control force does not have the right to control Bavarian borders. In other words, the federal police is in charge and they won't do anything. And the Bavarians are forced to watch that while they're not allowed to do anything. And then, of course, we only discuss the border between Austria and Bavaria. Now, this is, of course, at the moment still the largest interface of influx into Germany, but this doesn't need to stay that way once you theoretically would check there more often, or if you consider all the other borders that Germany has in the sum, that is still a sizable amount. And if you do not do the same thing there, the problem will not be solved. And by the way, these human traffickers, these illegals, are way more flexible than our slow and ineffective government. They can change the routes of illegal migration overnight, while we need discussions that go on for half a year and a crisis of government in Germany, where the government coalition almost breaks apart over this little tiny problem. So George Soros and his human traffickers are probably laughing about us right now. And this brings me already to my first observation as a more general point, and this is the democratic process at the moment, or more the conformation of the democratic spectrum, the democratic apparatus at the moment that we're really dealing with in Europe. As I said earlier, many parties must agree to things where there is no consensus yet. So the result will always be the lowest common denominator, or in other words, it will be homeopathy. They will water down measures and solutions to such a degree that in the end, everyone, even people with totally opposing viewpoints, can agree on them. So first, Merkel was diluting the solution a little bit, and then the Social Democrats added more solvent, and the agent was becoming so thinned out that in the end you have basically a homeopathic dose of the solution, which is not a real solution, only a placebo, as we all know. So this is just a symbolic gesture, nothing else. But a stupid symbolic gesture almost leads to a break in the German government. This is how hypersensitive and fragile our idiotic system is at the moment. My second point, who to blame? People always blame politicians, of course. We have a word for that. When you see displays, disgraceful displays like this, for example, people get more and more Politikverdrossen, as we say in German. This word means, well, the first part is politics, of course, and the second part of the word, verdrossen, it's an adjective, by the way, means that you are fed up, that you have enough. So that means people are fed up and annoyed with politics and they turn their back on politics altogether. They don't want to see anything, they don't want to hear anything. They retreat to a life of private pleasures and they do gardening and have some barbecues with their friends and maybe watch football on the television, or they collect stamps. What do I care? This is perfectly understandable from an individual point of view, of course, but when everybody becomes like that, or just a sizable amount of the population becomes like that, this is exactly what our elites want. In this way, as long as there is enough of bread and circus going on, the people can be manipulated without end, until the Big Bang comes. But is that really the fault of the politicians, though? If you know me just a little bit, you know, of course, that I'm not convinced of that. Look at the individual politician. What is he about to do? What is he supposed to do? The truth is that our society becomes more and more intolerant and fractured. This is the second German expression that I want to teach you today. When we describe this, we use the term italienische Verhältnisse. What that means is Italian conditions. Verhältnis means condition. So of course we don't mean good food, yummy ice cream and dirty streets. What we mean in the political realm when we say italienische Verhältnisse is that the political landscape is so fractured and there are so many factions and political parties and even wings within those parties that society as a whole becomes unmanageable. People will fight each other out of principle, out of spite, and they don't even know in the end who started the fight and why they're even fighting each other, probably just because that other guy said something. Groups are opposing each other just because it's the other group. For example, I told you that the Italian government changed way more often since World War II than the German one. This is a state that for us Germans is highly undesirable. We want to have order and stability, first and foremost. By the way, when we say amerikanische Verhältnisse, then we generally mean inner city crime and gang violence and drug dealers and stuff like that. So that's what Germans generally mean when they talk about amerikanische Verhältnisse, American conditions, which of course nobody wants also. But coming back to the original point, how is that the fault of the political class? I see it in my private life, I see it with my colleagues at work. People are more and more intolerant and they cannot really accept other people's lifestyles or point of views anymore. In other words, they do not tolerate diversity anymore. Friendships break apart over the question how to recycle your garbage, or whether or not nuclear power is a viable option for Germany. This is insane. If we open up new fronts on each and every little issue that is being discussed, then in the end there are no groups with common interests left. And yes, there was an era in Germany when there were two major parties, Volksparteien. That was the Christian Conservative Bloc and the Labour Party like SPD, the Social Democratic Party. This era is long gone. Now we have the Liberal Party, the Green Party, the Communistic Linke Party, and now even the AfD. And so the reason why our politicians cannot act effectively in this question is just simply because the people are divided on these issues. And the people are especially divided on the issue of migration. Yes, the AfD is gaining in strength because many people see that the solutions of the conservative parties are only placebos or symbolic gestures and not actual real measures, but the block of people that actually want more migration for Germany and that actually want Europeans to become a minority in Europe, this group exists and it's very large, believe it or not. Another effect can be seen in a group that is a little bigger, I think. In my opinion, it is related to the not in my backyard attitude. In many polls, people actually say that they want to limit and control migration into Germany, and they actually see too many foreigners coming in a very short amount of time from very incompatible cultures as a big problem. However, when measures are taken by the government to actually send people back that shouldn't be here, for example, they freak out, they feel uncomfortable on an emotional level, they don't want to see these images, like when police drags away an immigrant in handcuffs. They think that's a horrible thing. For some reason they have no problem with a German criminal being held in handcuffs, but when it is a person maybe with another skin color, then it is a big issue all of a sudden, and it's a human rights scandal. And they will vote for any politician who scandalizes this. For example, in the case of a perfectly legal deportation. The word alone is enough to make many Germans vote for left-wing parties. In polls, they state that they want less migration from certain areas and that, of course, people who became criminals here have to be sent back, but when they see it actually implemented, their emotional reflexes tell them to vote for the Green Party all of a sudden. And this is, of course, a purely feminine, purely emotional attitude, something that people can only afford in very wealthy golden ages such as ours right now. Once you're confronted with real life problems, this kind of thinking will cease very fast, I'm sure. So here we have the puzzling effect that people rationally want one thing, but when they see it implemented, even in a very humane manner, they still oppose it for emotional reasons. I think it's pretty much related to the not in my backyard phenomenon. We have a figure of speech in Germany that goes, "Wasch mir den Pelz, aber mach mich nicht nass." Loosely translated, please wash me, but don't get me wet in the process. Like having your cake and eating it too, something like that. And as long as people act like petulant children who say one thing and want another, what is the political class supposed to do if they want to stay in power and continue to get votes? Most of these people live in a little bubble where they never have to work on the free market, they never have to deal with other people from other cultures, they don't know what's coming, they don't know the first thing about human biodiversity, they never really traveled, they just want to feel good about themselves. And at the moment that entails, of course, to believe that everyone is the same, and as long as we all keep quiet, everything will go along just easily. Now, why are there so many people that get really hyped up about how much plastic, or if plastic at all, should be used in order to wrap cheese that is sold in a supermarket, but they see absolutely no problem with millions of people with completely hostile and incompatible cultures coming in, who, including their offspring, will never seriously be able to compete with the rest of us or to contribute in a significant way to the production process in Germany. They will for generations to come be dependent on handouts. And we all know what will happen if the capacity of the Germans to come up with these tribute payments will diminish in the future. Now, I don't really see a silver bullet solution to the problem because there is no one common root cause of the problem. Stardust made a video about the silver bullet guys that offer you a solution that will actually end all those problems, and most of the time it includes an ideology or some kind of a conspiracy theory, and I mean a literal conspiracy theory, not just an actual conspiracy or something that's well known. I mean that they need to design the problem or describe the problem in such a way that the root cause is a common one and that it can easily be dealt with. I don't think that's the case. I think we can understand what's going on, but it's very complex, and you have to have the intellect and you have to put in the time and the effort to understand what's going on. Now, coming back to the Western world, or Germany in particular right now, these things are not specific for Germany, of course. They could be said to other wealthy, successful Western countries in just the same way. I can just say, as TFM says sometimes, for example, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And this is really the only thing that comes to my mind when I consider these recent events. Apparently some people and also many politicians are thinking that we're not in any danger and that everything will just go along smoothly. And the point I really wanted to bring across is that the political class, the political parties that we have, are a product of society, but the attitude of society towards the political system is, of course, also shaped by the way that these parties in turn deal with certain crises or with certain tasks at hand. So it is a coupled system, of course. It's a chicken or egg problem, if you wish. It is a codependent system that just evolves in time, and you cannot put blame on one or the other side. They both influence each other, of course. And it is easy to just bash politicians, but really ask yourself the question, someone has to vote for these people. If they wouldn't get the votes from some people, they would be gone after the next term or the next elections. So someone votes for all these Green Party lunatics, someone votes for all these social democrats, and they think that plastic wrapping cheese in the supermarket is Germany's biggest problem right now. Because to them personally, on an emotional level, it probably is. So there is no real solution at the moment within our political system, I think. It will go on like that until there is some kind of economic breakdown where we cannot afford to think like that anymore and we have to face the real world. Then men, for example, would have to stop to listen to their women's sentimentalities and do what is necessary. Also, women will actually change their attitudes and they will all of a sudden miraculously deem certain traits in men much more attractive than before. Things that they now think are brutish and horrible then will be actually the deciding factor for mate selection. And whether or not this will be catastrophic and apocalyptic depends on how steep, on how sudden this change occurs. It could occur gradually and then it wouldn't be that bad probably. We will see. But coming back to the original situation in Germany, we can see that nothing really changed because nobody thinks it's an urgent problem and because people think that we can afford to pay for all that stuff, probably indefinitely. I also don't own a crystal ball. I don't know if that is true, but I'm very skeptical about our ability to maintain these payments that are effectively just tribute payments to hostile foreign tribes. And it is not like there isn't a historical example for all this stuff. So it is not all too irrational to try to enjoy the decline, because I don't think many of us will enjoy the coming dark ages. While I still remain mildly hopeful that it doesn't come to that, but it is very probable from my point of view. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Servus, Kameraden.